My teacher intimidated me and threatened my family, but instead of taking revenge, I decided to overcome these difficult times with determination and courage. She even got to the point of assaulting me, causing injuries to my lips and displaying a sadistic smile. However, I chose not to follow a path of revenge, choosing to transform my life positively. This is the story of how I faced the adversities caused by my teacher. Subscribe to my YouTube channel to accompany my journey and enable notifications to not miss any details. The city where it all happened is small, and the school I attended has a long history, with my grandfather and father also being alumni. Starting with a tribute to the successful alumni of this institution, the school has always been recognized for its tradition of charity and the retirement benefits offered to teachers. My great-grandfather contributed donating properties to the construction of the school when he was a counselor and part of the school board. The school, which was initially exclusive to boys, became mixed in 1996. Currently shelters classes from kindergarten to high school, divided into 2 buildings. The first part of the story involves a conflict between the teacher and my father. The math teacher, whom I will call MD, was highly qualified, but unfortunately, her personality left to be desired. It required students' stiffness, imposing absurd rules, such as not drinking water without permission and controlling even to the bathroom. Despite complaints, the school council supported it, claiming that this contributed to the discipline. Her classes were challenging, and the constant interruptions of the students made her abandon teaching. In addition, his tests were notoriously difficult, generating panic in the class. My father, initially believing that he failed, found that his grade was incorrect. Even after correcting the score, he faced difficulties to be heard by MD. Instead of seeking revenge, I decided to transform this experience into learning and personal growth. Life is full of challenges, and my journey is a testimony of how it is possible to overcome adversities with resilience and determination. My father explained to her that there was a mistake in the final grade and that he really had a 49. This somehow bothered her. Instead of calling him to check the work, the teacher, whom I will call MD, decided that it was simply impossible for her, a math and mathematics, to make such a simple mistake as an addition. She waved at him, leaving my father shocked. However, she moved to the next student as if nothing had happened. On the other hand, my father did not accept it peacefully. He got up from his chair, which was almost considered a crime in his classroom, put the paper on the MD table and began to add his points out loud. At the end of the totalization, it was evident that her face was red with anger. She looked furiously from the paper to my father and back to the paper. Suddenly a cruel smile appeared on his face. "Okay, I see the mistake, but that's no excuse for this behavior," she said, subtracting 10 points from my father's final grade. The class, which was surprised by the first sentence, had a dark look again. My father was astonished, as he had 39 points now and had failed the discipline. Instead of answering, he simply took the final race, got the backpack and left the room. He sought my grandfather, who was towards the school, but was informed that nothing could be done, because the grades were totally in the hands of the teacher. Despite the concern, my father accepted the defeat and decided that revenge was not worth it, choosing to change classes. He abandoned the subject taught by MD and began to study economy, thus ending his last interaction with this teacher. Part 2: The battle between my younger brother, me and MD. When I was a freshman in high school, my younger brother was in 7th grade. We had an auditorium under construction and the library had recently been renovated. A teacher was assigned to supervise younger students in the library, and unfortunately MD was chosen. My father warned me about the need for care for MD, and I was aware. However, my younger brother had no idea who he was dealing with. In the library, students could take 2 books from their choice to the break. When my brother passed MD toward the librarian, he was arrested by her and was really confused. He had a book by Enid Blyton and a copy of Backyard Scientific Experiments. My brother and I were in love with scientific topics, and he was excited to conduct experiments during the summer holidays. MD asked, "Wait a minute, what book do you have there?" My brother replied, "A storybook and a backyard book." MD disrespectfully said, "And what do you think you are going to do with that backyard science book?" Turning to other library employees, she commented, "I taught his father that he has no brain, so I would have no idea what to do with this book. Leave it to those who have." With that, he ripped his book from his hands and walked away, laughing strangely. When my brother came looking for me crying, I was furious. I was popular at school, gained testing, participated in debates and represented the school in national competitions. However, my anger was not based on my own prestige, but on the injustice that MD was committing against my younger brother. My friends and I were practically a trophy showcase at school, with our names recorded in each of them. Most teachers admired us, and even the deputy director treated us by the first name, accompanying us in all the competitions in which we represented the school. However, when he shared what had happened, I was astonished. I didn't know how to react at the moment, but I went to the library to get another copy of the backyard book to comfort my brother. During the summer holidays, I didn't pay much attention to that. My friends and I won awards, such as the most efficient hydraulic gear-based pulleys system and the second faster chemical fuel running boat. This happened before I studied chemistry or physics in high school, and was announced at the school assembly right after the summer holidays. On the first day of school, I came across a chemistry class taught by MD, just after the award of our group. In the chemistry laboratory, MD was conducting an experiment to release hydrochloric acid vapors into a gas vial. There was an error, as there was no reaction due to impure and rusty zinc granules. Unusually, MD decided to increase Bunsen's beat to the maximum, hoping to intensify the experiment. After collecting the gas longer than necessary, MD showed the class how to perform the experiments. The situation reached the apex when she opened the bottle near a girl, saying that if the smell were strong. The girl retreated, apparently uncomfortable. I knew she was just reacting by reflection, not because of the odor. At that moment, involuntarily, I snorted loudly. MD immediately focused on me, coming toward me with an ugly expression. She asked if I had something funny to share with the class. Although she knew she had made a mistake, she was also annoyed that she intimidated my younger brother and my father. Remembering this, my verbal sensors were disconnected and I told her that I knew it was no strong smell. The experiment was a failure. MD indignantly turned to the class and said I thought I knew more than her. At an impulsive moment, I suggested that she resigned and offered to teach. I climbed to the podium, keeping eye contact with MD, and said the first thing to learn was to turn to try one of his lab books. Read the warnings that the gas is poignant and poisonous. How dare you? No one taught you what is really important. This is not a joke, and it is good for you to remember that, or you will have some serious problems. Originally, this happened in a different language, but if you want the exact translation, I will break your members and give them to you. She is completely furious, grabs my hand and begins to drag me into the director's room. On the way, we passed the deputy director's room, and he sees MD dragging me away and runs out. The deputy director asks what is happening here. Before I can say anything, MD begins to complain to him about how disrespectful and unacceptable my behavior in the class is. At the end of his speech, the deputy director gives me a penetrating look and responds with, "Go back to the confrontation, MD, I take care of it. I'll be back to your office," and it offers me a seat and a glass of water. So he asks, "Now, what really happened in class?" I sigh and tell him exactly what happened. When he hears my side of the story, he looks incredulously and asks if I really went to the podium and started teaching the class. I look up and see the shocked look on the normally reserved face of VPS. Imagine someone who looks like a Minerva McGonagall man becoming completely shocked. I can't contain myself and start laughing, until my stomach hurts and my eyes tear. To my surprise, the deputy director is also smiling wildly. He shakes his head and his expression normalizes. "I know what happened there, you worried about class security, but this is no reason for such disturbing behavior. In addition, I will personally investigate what happened in that class, and if it is discovered that MD is intentionally forcing students intentionally inhaling harmful chemicals, it will be fired immediately. Oh, and you should apologize to MD for this behavior. Now, move." I sign and go back to class, thinking that I had ended the career of MD. Since I was wrong, she changed her story. It seemed that she had done the wrong experiment on purpose and was about to scold that girl for inhaling what could be a harmful chemical. MD pulled one to me and made me look like I was just an insolent child who thought he knew everything by reading a chapter of the book. The event was me just facing the teacher who had been at school for over 35 years. This leads us to part 3 of the pro-revenge mode. Now I knew I wanted to help my brother, but I needed to get rid of her. My father knew what happened at school and wanted me not to get involved with MD. He said it wasn't worth it. But now I was in the game. She had thrown her letter, it was my turn. Now I don't know what made her have so many problems with my father and my younger brother. They were quiet and workers' students. I felt that she had something against our family and was convinced that my younger brother would have to deal with problems if I somehow missed and be expelled or transformed MD into a worst enemy. That was war, and I had a new plan. I started acting very shy near her and made a point of staying behind after class and asking questions as polite as possible. I was the boy guilty for not understanding the elders' plans. I introduced myself as an exemplary student that MD managed to humiliate. Slowly, but firmly, I was able to enter the best described category as boots licking. He heard me inside to do it, but with what I had planned, if all went well, it would make me dizzy with anxiety. I was there to win. I admitted the defeat in a struggle to win the war. 2 years later, I am in the first year of high school. My brother just started high school and was taking chemistry class with MD. I was the highest scorer in chemistry and the pet of MD. She began to like the version I had portrayed and appointed me a laboratory assistant that year. 2 of my best friends knew what I had planned. All the others in the class hated me because it was the teacher's pet and taking the highest grade when the next highest grade was a less beam. Everything was going as planned. On the first day of school, I replaced a 3-legged stool with a broken stool. This should be the first in a series of pranks that would hit her that day. She came to class, went to sit down, and fell. She hit the wall, and I inwardly celebrated. She was definitely overweight, and could not be attributed to me. I smiled as she ran to her and helped her get up. Then I ran and got her another chair while the freshmen tried not to laugh. When I returned from the room that had the extra chairs, I went to her shouting like a demon. What made me furious was that she was screaming with my younger brother. Apparently she said something like stupid tools and stupid laboratory assistant falls. My brother replied that it was not his fault, but that she was too heavy for the stool. Despite loving his answer, he really needed to learn when he came to my aid. I didn't do much, I just replaced the chair as I silently tried to communicate with my brother to calm down. Nothing more worrying happened that day until the end of classes. The teachers were going back to the stage, and we heard a big crash. Immediately, the large crowd of nearby students went to a teacher's parking lot. We saw the MD car smoking, and the exhaust exploded. Remember, it was an old car, and we decided to block the clay exhaust that hardened over 6 hours on a sunny day. Well, that car had to be towed, and she went home with some other students that day. She did not appear at school for 2 days after that, but returned on the 3rd day, which was a school, because our country celebrates the Teacher's Day. It is a tradition for students to look for their current and old teachers, wishing them the best, giving them cards, gifts, etc. This was by far the most ambitious prank I know at school. On the 2 days she was absent, we went around telling everyone not to visit her on the Teacher's Day. It helped a lot that my friends and I were some of the most popular at school, and with other boys and cool girls agreeing with it, we spread the news and got the confirmation that no one in our class would wish you good luck on the Teacher's Day. But what really happened was something no one could expect. I believe this has happened because we acted so intensely that our colleagues spread the news to all their friends. No person at school, absolutely no one, went to her on the Teacher's Day. It was the most amazing sense of achievement I've ever had. Even though she herself is the creator of the situation, being the most unpleasant person I've ever seen, it was no surprise that people were willing to do this to her. For the first time in 70 years in our school, a teacher did not have a single sympathizer on Teacher Day. Well, things are never perfect, and by chance, the news of what we had conspired came to her the next day. I had just assembled the laboratory, the freshmen were settling, and the MD's anger radiated her in waves. She walks to me and I get the strongest slap I've ever led in my life, right on my face. I hate to admit, but it left a blue mark on my cheek, and my nose and lips were bleeding. My younger brother, who saw this happen, ran toward me. My shock slowly diminished, and I smiled a bloody smile that probably scared him. I told him to call the deputy director. 20 minutes later, I was in the school emergency room, with a nurse wiping my lip and holding a cloth on my nose. The deputy director arrives with the director and 2 police behind. They tell me that my parents were informed and ask me if I would like to talk about it now or when my parents are here. I say that I can answer the questions as soon as they make a bandage on the lip. So, I tell them about the cases of bullying against my brother and me, and I also tell them that she is a really incompetent teacher. I inform the principal that he could check the school average in science subjects, and, as I suspected, the average score is in national exams. The physics and biology notes were 92 and 90, with a chemistry in surprising 79. In addition, with accusations of harassment, she lost her license to teach 2 years before retiring, and with that, lost her incredible retirement benefits that the school offered. Her car had no insurance either. This is not everything. You can ask, what could be worse? Well, consider this. Her fall of the stool ended up taking her to the hospital to make an X-ray of the wrist and hip she suspected could have been broken. While the wrist certainly had a fracture, the hip was okay. But while X-ray showed something else, I don't think it's normal for anyone to laugh when someone is diagnosed with stage cancer 3. However, I laugh. Later, I met the only living member of her family, the nephew, who has long cut all contact with her. But it was contacted by police at the hospital, and that's where I discovered the truth. Well, I could never have guessed what I found out there. MD's mother was my great-grandfather's niece, through my great-grandfather's younger brother, who stole money from the family and tried to kill my great-grandfather. He was rejected, and no one knew that all this time, not that someone cared. I'm just happy that this unpleasant woman is out of our lives forever. This time, apparently, she died last year, with no one by her side. So, I'm the idiot for the way I got it. This revenge was deep, and when we coordinate all not to visit her on the Teacher's Day, it was clear that her actions had left a lasting brand. He must have realized that something was happening, but probably did not expect to be attacked by his own teacher. I have a feeling that the revenge plan could have been more elaborated, but when it assaulted it, it no longer needed to execute its plans. That's it. He showed the deputy director, the police were called, and she lost everything, her license, retirement, and all the war that was happening between them. One thing I always wondered is which language comes the expression she used, "I will break your members and feed them with you." If anyone knows which language this expression originally comes, please let me know below. I'm sure it is a strange translation to English, but it sounds more natural in the native language. Despite all the teachers unlikely during this process, I imagine she was very hurt. No one visited her on the Teacher's Day, not even from that series. She may have cried when she realized this. The fear and sadness of having no one there turned into anger, and anger led to hatred. Hate, in turn, led to suffering. In the end, she faced many difficulties. After losing family, retirement, without any vindication, and having to deal with the accusation of aggression, she ended up developing cancer and died. Now that you know the whole story, is the question, was revenge justified or was it too far? Let me know in the comments if you consider it a right or exaggerated attitude and why. Subscribe, enable notifications and follow the playlist at the top of the description to listen to all the stories in this series. In today's episode of HistoReddit, we explored an epic student revenge against an unfair teacher. The initially elaborated plan gets an unexpected course when the teacher attacks the student, triggering a series of events that makes her lose everything. Was this revenge justified, or was it too far? Comment below. Be sure to subscribe, leave your like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any exciting episode here on HistoReddit. Until the next story.